You're listening to the Staging Sips podcast with Lori Fischer. This podcast is dedicated to helping real estate staging CEOs build healthy businesses that grow, flow, and thrive. This podcast episode is brought to you by my new masterclass, 3 Simple Steps to Make More Money in Your Staging Business. So if you are planning to make money in your business, want to make money in your staging business, or struggling to make money in your staging business, come and join us October 27th. You can register to join at www.rethinkhominteriors.com/masterclass. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I hope you had an amazing week, and I am happy to be back with you this week on the podcast. So this week we're wrapping up the 3rd phase of growing a successful staging business. We talked about how we wanted to kind of have a roadmap for you to see exactly what's headed your way. And last week, I hope it wasn't too depressing. The accelerate phase, it is a very busy phase. It can be a very challenging phase to get through, but there is light on the other side of that. And that is phase 3, which is your leveraged business. So we're going to talk all about that. That is kind of like the sweet spot. My favorite phase of business, truthfully, is this leveraged business phase. I'm loving it. So let's dive into it. So first of all, let's just define leverage. And so that way it can make more sense as we talk through what a leveraged business is and what it looks like. So leverage is using a lever to exert force on another object. And let me just be a science geek for a minute and just talk about the fact that when you use a lever to exert force on another object, you can lift more weight than you could on your own. So you're using a tool to help make lifting the weight easier is essentially all that means. So when you've got a leveraged business, it really just means that you'll be able to serve more clients with less effort on your part, or just turning up the notch a tiny little bit. So that already sounds different from Accelerate, right? Accelerate is all about like being a little bit on your heels and having to lift way more than you are ready to. This is about being able to lift way more with all of the tools in place to be able to do it a lot easier. And that, I don't know about you, but sounds dreamy amazing, doesn't it? I thought it was wicked dreamy, if I'm to dust off my New England girl lexicon, my verbiage there. So this is the time in business when your calendar is more consistently full most of the time. Again, if you have a seasonal business, maybe it's not full of staging appointments, but it could be full of other kinds of appointments and other kinds of services that you are running in those quieter times, those quieter real estate times. Your staffing is more stable, so you are likely to have fewer people coming and going. Now that can lead to its own set of conditions in which you need to work from in terms of motivating your team and, training and all of that. And it may come up with some HR and staffing issues, but in general, if you've hired really well, you've got a friggin' kick-ass team at this point. And you may have to accommodate and add on new team occasionally, but it's not feeling like it is something that you're in a cycle of all the time. At this point, if you have invested in inventory for your staging business, much of your inventory has paid for itself many times over at this point, and you likely are going to get to buy new inventory more thoughtfully and all of that. So you may actually be busy with like inventory sales and things like that. But this is also, and why it's my favorite part, the time of when passive income for you as a business owner starts to flow. And passive income, if you're not familiar with that terminology, simply means that you are making money while you are, out at, on vacation or hanging out Netflixing on the weekends or something like that. Passive income is coming into your business without you personally, the business owner, having to work so hard to create that revenue. And you're not using your time specifically to create that revenue. Because at this point in your business, as you've gone through the accelerate phase and you've created systems and you've developed team, your trained team and your automation and your processes can handle things that you have traditionally handled, things like inbound sales conversations, all of the scheduling, all of the delivery of the services, like every single step of delivering a service. your team training and development. You may not be doing that anymore. You may have a team member who is in charge of that responsibility within your business. Vetting and bringing and hiring new candidates. You may have to come in for the final interview, but you have a team who has been trained to know what you look for, how to handle all of the interview process, and to put forward the very best candidate or two for which then you are kind of the final decision maker on. Running meetings. You may not have to prepare or run meetings when you're at this phase of the business. You can be a participant, or maybe not. Some business owners I know are not even participants in these things. You can be creating new processes as needed for your business. And we'll talk about some of those in a minute. Most, if not all, of your in-person and online marketing could be handled by a very well-trained and well-hired team member. So lots of exciting things. So you're generating revenue in your business doing less. So if you've taken all of those things off of your list, right? Like in Accelerate, you're wearing like 1,000 hats and you've started to shed them one by one so that your team and automation and systems can really help you do all of those things. What is that left for you to do? Right? Let's take a look at that for a minute. So before we look at what you are left to do, I just want to dive into what I kind of call the altitudes of responsibility inside of your business. So what are kind of the ground floor business responsibilities, and then kind of what's mid range, and then what's like that higher level CEO version of responsibilities within your business. So the caveat is that I want to say with this is that we all go through all of these and we shed them as we grow, and we shed them as we grow depending on how fast the business grows and how fast our mindsets can adjust and shift to these things. Your mindset is everything as you go through shedding your responsibilities. So, and there's no judgment. Everybody goes at their own pace here. Certainly we can accelerate the pace by doing a lot more mindset work and more education, but no judgment on any of these things. If you believe you're in a leveraged business and you're still doing these things, no judgment. So let's start with like 5,000 foot level responsibilities. So these are all about kind of ground floor implementation. As I said, these are boots on the ground kinds of things. So things like day-to-day admin responsibilities, scheduling appointments and following up, styling evaluations and consultations, going to vacant previews, buying inventory, looking at storage space, organizing your inventory, pulling, packing, and delivering inventory if you're doing vacant staging, installations, scheduling emails, sending client agreements, bookkeeping, networking, and marketing. Those are all kind of grassroots kinds of responsibilities. All of those things that you were doing in the very beginning, that first phase growth in your business, are 5,000 foot level responsibilities. Then there are kind of the mid-range, 10,000 foot level responsibilities. And this is where you've got department leaders who are responsible for these things. So there's a layer between the implementation activities at the 5,000 foot level and between the higher level CEO responsibilities at the 30,000 foot. Now, I know those altitudes aren't exactly like equal in terms of how far apart they are, but at 30,000, we just want you to be way, way high above the business so you can see it a little more clearly. So the 10,000 foot level responsibilities would be things like where you have somebody hired who's doing your team training, your team development, your team motivation, inspiration, all of that. Team building, essentially. Planning and running meetings, as I mentioned before. There is likely someone who's handling inventory management, so a lead doing that. So whether that is damaging things out, making sure the storage facility is organized, making sure that your inventory system is updated, making sure that we have a process in place for pulling inventory and packing it and getting it ready for the moving team or the delivery team. that would be kind of your inventory management lead. You may have somebody at the 10,000 foot level doing sales conversations for you. That may still be you. You may still be working through that, even if you're in a leverage business. You might still be handling all of the sales conversations. But certainly, 10,000 foot level would also be quoting for services provided. So if you are running a vacant staging business, you likely want to be training somebody to know how to price those services. And again, all of these things happen as you develop your team, as you grow your team through that accelerate phase. And you may even enter your leveraged phase of business where things are coming more easily and you're still training people to do this. So you may still be vacillating between 5,000 foot responsibilities, 10,000 and 30,000 foot. You might have yourself in a little bit of each of these for a while until you get further into your leveraged phase of business and can slowly begin to shed even more. And again, networking and marketing, again, could be considered 10,000 foot level responsibilities, because if you've got someone, who's doing social media for you because they're a specialist in social media, maybe before it was simply a team member or you, now you've got somebody in to kind of help you with your overall strategy. And then there are the 30,000 level responsibilities, which is what you hit in your leverage phase of business. So this is where you can start to lift your head and begin to dive deeper into being really intentional about decision making for the business and corporate values. Because at this point, you have gotten your systems and processes in place, the frameworks, they're humming along, and any new systems and processes are really going to be established and created by the team members who are implementing, because they are the ones who know it the best at this point. At one point, you were the one who knew it the best. Now they are the ones who know it the best. That's why you want to hire so well, because you want to hire people who are going to tell you what is the best way to do things, right? It's really cool when that starts to happen. So when you start to hit your CEO level responsibilities in leverage, you're going to be thinking about, like, how do we make decisions for, who do we work with? How do we work with them? How do we change our minds? If we've made a decision to move forward with a project, how do we decide if it's not the ideal project for right now? How do teams work together? So if we've got multiple pods of staging teams, where maybe we have a lead stager, an assistant stager, and a moving team, how do they work together? Does our moving team get spread across multiple projects per day? Do they, or do the stagers get shifted across multiple projects a day? How do they work together? And how do they work together based on the day of the week and team availability? What do we reward, and how do we reward it? So looking for ways to engage our team and keep them motivated. What's the reward? And for each employee, that could be really very different. And as we go through other episodes of the podcast, we're going to talk about that, because hiring is so important to the growth of your business. So, and knowing what makes your employees tick and what motivates them is really important, because it's not the same for everybody. What do we value, and how do we show it? So do we value diversity, equity, inclusion? Yes. If we're saying yes, how do we show that? Do we show that through our hiring practices, through the vendors we work with? What does that look like? How do we react when things go wrong? Things go wrong in this business all the time from the very beginning. And actually our next podcast is going to be about boundaries. And the following one is going to be all about communication plans, which of course typically come into play when things have gone wrong. So you'll already be working on some of these things. So how do we react when things go wrong? How do we react if a team member has done something that, has jeopardized a project, a property, a relationship? How do we handle that? How can we support our team better? How can we lessen the number of decisions they have to make so that they can be in their sweet spot, right? A lot of your business growth is going to be learning all about what's your sweet spot of skills? What do you love to do? What are you good at doing? And where should you be spending your time? You're going to be doing the same thing with your team. How can you take off hats. If you have team members wearing too many hats, and Accelerate, out of just sheer necessity, you may have, like, my administrative assistant for a long time handled all of the scheduling, all of the setting up of all of the client folders, and all the follow up to a client after they booked an appointment with us. But she also handled social media, and on our design side of the business, she also handled purchasing. Those three things are all massive. So as we moved into the leverage business, we slowly pared back what she was doing so she could stay in her zone of genius and she was also doing all of the bookkeeping as well. Like, so four massive things. She's a superhero. Not all heroes wear capes, my sister always says. And my office queen, as we call her, Catherine, was handling a lot. And as part of entering into leverage and me wearing my CEO hat at this kind of thinking 30,000 foot above the business, was how can we take those off of her shoulders? How can we lessen her burden and help her just stay in her zone of genius as much as possible all day long, so she can just, get it done so efficiently? Because ultimately, in your business, I want to have people who have a great balance of work life, and I want them to feel like they are living in their best place as, every day that they come to work. So we're not trying to leverage them for tasks that are difficult for them or super taxing. We want them to be in their sweet spot. So, but coming out of this phase, into the leverage phase, you're actually coming out of that very intense phase of Accelerate. So as you begin to leverage, you're going to encounter some mindset issues that can really creep up on you and might be surprising. And I want to share these with you. And I don't think I'm alone in this, because these were definitely things that came up for me that I want to share with you. And I'm sure this is not an inclusive list. I'm sure there are so many more thoughts that come up as you go from Accelerate into leverage. But here's kind of the big things that I had come up for me. So the first is that you just have to acknowledge you'll have more white space in your days. So you'll have more downtime because you may not be in the day-to-day delivery of the staging services anymore. You won't likely be in the day-to-day of pulling and packing and picking inventory and all of that. So you're going to go from where you've grown a business, where you've created some habits for your activities, to like full-blown addiction into your business and Accelerate phase. So you may have feelings of guilt that you aren't doing enough in this phase. And you're entering this new phase of business skill development. So you may not actually know what to do during that phase. So not only are you feeling guilty because you're not doing enough, but when you sit to think about like, well, what should I even do? You're almost kind of like back in that growth phase where you don't actually know what you should be doing with your time. So you're kind of like wondering, where do you fit in, and how is it fair that you are having more open space in your days and your team is out maybe hustling their buns during the busiest times of the year. So again, you may not know what to do with yourself, and you may expand it by diving back into 5,000 foot tasks and 10,000 foot tasks for your business, because that's what you know how to do. And so you may find yourself wanting to gravitate towards doing things that really are someone else's job responsibility or role responsibility, and somebody's role responsibility where there's actually a person sitting there who has that responsibility, right? It's one thing to dip into a responsibility that you don't actually have staff for. Is another thing to dip into someone else's job, right? So you just want to be aware of that as you're in Accelerate. As you're in the leverage phase. And you may feel like working should be the priority during your days, when actually maybe what you can be doing is reconnecting with who you are, right? Like, so you may be able to reconnect with things that you did before you started the business, and all of that. But you may feel like you aren't setting a good example for your team if you're not showing up and pitching in, right? So there's like all of this mind drama that can come from this kind of relief of you're not drinking from the fire hose anymore like you are in Accelerate. And you're coming back to this quieter recalibration, and you kind of need to reinvent yourself again. And it is so much like the bookends with growth, where you're reinventing yourself as a staging business owner in the very beginning, and now you are doing it again. You're not only are you going, you're going from being staging business owner to staging business CEO. And that is, very interesting reinvention of who you are. So let me just give you some thoughts and questions that might be helpful to you as you go through this phase. So the first thought is, my busyness is not good for my business. So you sitting in tasks that are meant for, other team members at the 5,000 and 10,000 foot level might not be the best use of your time for your business, because you want to be thinking about those things like, how do we, express what we value? How do we help our teams work better? How can we make decisions, and how do we handle when things go wrong, right? Like all of those things. So that, I think, is a really great mantra to have. The next is, my value as a business owner isn't wrapped up in the length of my to-do list. This was a big one for me. I really struggled when my to-do list got small and I felt like I was twiddling my thumbs a lot, not totally sure what to do with myself. So I did get in the way of my other team members' role responsibilities. And of course, I messed it up every time I did, because I wasn't doing it every day. And somebody else wasn't sure, like the next time a task like that came through, was I going to jump in and take care of it? Were they supposed to jump in? Were they supposed to sit back? Did it mean that they weren't doing their job? And that's what I was trying to tell them in a very passive aggressive way. So this is like a huge one, because you literally come out of Accelerate where your to-do list is massively long. Here's a really wonderful thought. This is the time and financial freedom I started this business for, which you can, put your hand on your heart, which is a very soothing, loving thing to do, and just tell your brain and your soul that this is exactly why I started this business. If in fact that's why you started your business, right? The smaller my to-do list is, the more sellers we can help. Ooh, dang, that is a good one. I'm going to say it again. The smaller my to-do list is, the more sellers we can help. Because the smaller your to-do list is, the more you have people in place who are likely able to amplify what you're doing in the world, right? Amplify your marketing, amplify your service delivery, all of that. So if you got into business to help more sellers not have to struggle and be able to make more money, or realtors or investors or builders or whatever that is, the smaller your to-do list is, the more you can help. There are people out there who are way better at this than me. Oh my goodness, yes. And they can do it easier with more joy and more happiness and more rainbows and unicorns. This is a huge one. And that by paying for those things, it's an investment. There's a return on investment, not only in the form of your time, a return on investment, very likely if someone marketing and implementing your services who are going to help you grow that business financially as well. So you'll get that return on investment that way. How do I stop putting my life outside of the business on hold and do what I really want to do with my free time? This is a big one. I know I personally went very quickly into addiction with my business as soon as I started it. And I had forgotten who I was as I hit this leveraged phase of business. I forgot what I enjoyed doing. And for a lot of time, I sat kind of throughout the day, as I said, needling in other people's role responsibilities, and kind of avoiding trying to figure out, what did I like to do for myself, right? What are the things I want to do? This is very, very big to just your overall well-being as a business owner. So how do I stop putting my life outside of the business on hold to do what I really want to do? And this one's a really fun one to think about. If I were a billionaire, how would I be spending my days, right? So this is a great way to tap into, like, if I were a billionaire, what would I be doing? Me personally, I'd probably be wandering through museums, beautiful design showrooms, taking singing lessons, taking hip hop lessons, going to the theater. Like, those are all of the things that I enjoy. I'd be working on projects around my own house more. I'd probably be looking for, another house that I could be doing projects in, all of that good stuff. So This is a really wonderful, beautiful time in business, being in the leveraged phase of your staging business. But I just want you to prepare and know what you're looking for and be ready for some of this mindset drama to come up for you so that you can start thinking it once again, just so that you're not on your heels as you get here, so you can really enjoy the fullest scope of this, or even just do these exercises now so that as you're thinking about how you create your business, what do you want that to look like? Because it's never too early to start implementing strategies for the business that's ahead of you now. Okay. All right, everybody. That's your sip for the week. I hope you loved it. And I hope you have a wicked, amazing, super awesome week ahead of you. I'll see you next week. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Staging Sips podcast. If you love what you've learned here today and you want to learn more about how to market and grow your staging business more strategically, I would love to see you join us inside of the Rethink You mentorship program. If you want more details and get on our waiting list, you can go to rethinkhomeinteriors.com/waitlist. Looking forward to seeing you in the classroom.